Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wassalam ala Sayyidil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen. Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima tu'allimuna wa zidna bifadlika ilman wa ta'liman innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. So we did this here. We mentioned that that doesn't count. You can't inherit, but you could do wasiyah. So you could, your parent, your non-Muslim relatives could inherit from you, or anybody else could inherit from you through a wasiyah. You make a will, and similarly, you could inherit from them through a will. Right. So when we talk about inheritance, we mean an inheritance that happens with or without your, whether you want it or not. We mentioned about inheritance of slaves. We did that. We did this issue here. Okay, so we are on to here. Question was inheritance of a child carried by a woman into Dar al-Islam. So it says أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا بكير بن عبد الله بن الأشج عن سعيد المسيب قال أبى عمر بن الخطاب أن يورث أحدا من الأعاجم إلا ما ولد في العرب. So he says, Malik informed us from Bukayr ibn Abdullah ibn Ashaj, who informed us from Sa'id al-Musayyib, the son-in-law of Abu Huraira, the great mufti and of Medina, who said Umar ibn Khattab. And as we mentioned many times before, Sa'id al-Musayyib did not study with Umar ibn Khattab. He was probably a little kid when Sayyidina Umar passed away. So he didn't hear him say this. So we're going to say, as a chain of transmission, there's a gap in the chain. Therefore, it is weak. Therefore, it's not reliable. But we say those rules are general rules. Imam Ahmad was asked if Sa'id ibn Musayyib narrates from Sayyidina Umar, do we accept it? He says yes, 100%, not a problem. So yes, it's fine. Refuse to make any non-Arabs, right, inherit from each other except those born among the Arabs. So what is he talking about here? What's the difference between an Arab and non-Arab? Right? What's he talking about is new Muslims whose lineage was not known, okay, unless he was born among the Arabs who were known, right? So how does Imam Muhammad explain this? He says, قال Muhammad, قال محمد وبهذا نأخذ لا يورث الحميل الذي يسبى وتسبى معه امرأة فتقول هذا ولدي وتقول هو أخي أو يقول هي أختي ولا نسب من الأنساب يورث إلا ببينة إلا الوالد والولد فإنه إذا ادعى الوالد أنه ابنه وصدقه فهو ابنه ولا يحتاج في هذا إلى بينة إلا أن يكون الولد عبدا فيكذبه مولاه بذلك فلا يكون ابن الأب ما دام عبدا حتى يصدقه المولى والمرأة إذا ادعت الولد وشهدت امرأة حرة مسلمة على أنه ولدته وهو يصدقها وهو حر فهو ابنها وهو قول أبي حنيفة والعامة من فقهائنا رحمه الله. So what is the issue here? The issue is about people basically faking lineage. So it's almost like the issue. We'll read it, and so it's almost like the issue of, imagine refugees. Okay, refugees saying, this lady, for example, she was applying for asylum in the United States. Okay, and then she says, and my 18 children, they need to come with me. Your 18 children. These are all your children. So yeah. Do you have a birth certificate? Of course I don't have a birth certificate. I was born in a war. Why are you asking me for a birth certificate? So all of these 18 children, they were all your children, and they were all, right? In reality, they're not her children. Half of them are her nieces and nephews, right? So this is the scenario that we're talking about. So it says, Muhammad said, we adhere to this. The child who has been captured, okay? Here's this woman who was taken as a prisoner of war when the Muslims were in Central Asia. Okay? And carried to Dar al-Islam, to the Muslim lands. And a woman captured along with him is not made as an heir if she says, this is my boy, or he is my brother, or she says, she is my sister. Why? Because I don't trust you. Because I know what you're trying to do. All you're trying to do is basically inherit from that kid. I don't know I don't know where, like, I don't know what your lineage is. I don't know, there's no proof of this or anything. And you're just trying to basically make a financial claim without any evidence. So we don't trust you. So there's no claim in lineage is allowed to inherit except by clear evidence and corroborative testimony, apart from, what's an exception? The father and the child. So a man says, this is my child. Okay? Because if the child claims that this is this child, and there's no evidence, but the child says, yeah, this is my dad, then we will accept it, because that is the default. We don't need to prove otherwise. And this does not need corroborative testimony or evidence, except in the case where the child is a slave and his owner denies it, right? And in which case he will not be recognized as the son of the father as long as he is a slave until the owner confirms it. So now you are making a financial claim. So a man is saying, yeah, that slave is my son. So now this the slave owner has a slave, said this is my property. So property ownership, what is it? Possession is 9/10 of the law, right? That's in Islam as well. I have a slave, okay, and for you to take the slave away from me, or to claim other than what the situation, you have to bring some evidence. Otherwise, you're taking my property away from me for no reason. Okay, maybe the slave can go up to this man and say, "Hey, claim that you're my dad," and he says, he's my son," and then the slave confirms it to just get free, right? So in which case he will not be regarded as a son of the father as long as he is a slave until the owner himself confirms it. When a woman claims a child and a free Muslim woman confirms, yes, indeed, she did give birth to this child, then the child affirms it, and he is a free person. Why is that particularly important with a woman? Because a woman, for example, a woman cannot be separated from the child, right? So these two, a woman and a woman and a child were taken as prisoners of war. They made an agreement. Let's stay together. So she makes this claim. Oh, this child is mine, right? Then they couldn't be separated. So you're making claims. Similarly, if she was owned, she's a slave and she's owned, and then she has a child, then she has a child from her master, then the master cannot sell her, and she will become free once the master dies. So there's various things that are happening there. But by default, you say, this is my child. It's fine. The child affirms and is a free person. He is regarded as her son. That is the verdict of Imam Abu Hanifa and our fuqaha in general. May Allah have mercy on them. Right. So you have to understand that there's different elements to things from different angles. Right. Yeah. And just as an example, it's kind of different, but in the Shafi fiqh they mention a woman says that she's not married. Okay, or that she's been divorced. Sorry. A woman says she's been divorced. Does she need to prove that? The answer is no. Why? Because she's not making a claim on anybody. But if she says Zaid divorced me, oh, you're making a claim now. You've got to prove that. You see the difference? So what, isn't it the same? So you know it's different. Before you said Zaid divorced me. So now you made a claim against somebody, you now need to prove that. And need proof of that divorce. Right? Otherwise, she said that she was divorced. She doesn't need to prove that because she's not making a claim against anybody. So here we're asking, whenever there's a claim that is being made and there are rights that will follow on, we need to have evidence, right? Otherwise, people could do all sorts of things. Okay, then he goes on to bequest. So he says, So he says, أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا نافع عن عبد الله بن عمر أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ما حق امرئ مسلم له شيء يوصي فيه يبيت ليلتين إلا ووصيته عنده مكتوبة. So Imam Malik informed us, saying Nafi informed us from Abdullah ibn Umar that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, it is not right for a Muslim man who has something to bequeath, i.e. some wealth, to spend 2 nights unless his bequest is with him written down. Right? قال محمد وبهذا نأخذ وهو حسن جميل. Muhammad said, we adhere to this and this is good and approved, meaning it's a nice thing to do. If you have some money, you should have a bequest. Is it obligatory as the hadith implies? It is not obligatory. Why is it not obligatory? Because originally the wasiyah was obligatory. It's mandated in the Quran, and then it was abrogated by the fixed inheritance shares that Islam came in with. So whether you know the money that you owe or you don't know what you own, whether you've told people, it doesn't matter. The Sharia will come along and say, this is your property, whether you knew it or not, and this is how it's going to be divided, whether you knew it or not, or whether you approved or not, as opposed to a bequest, which is your own custom-made thing, just totally different. The next discussion then is,
sorry, Ustad.
Go ahead.
So bequest is different from inheritance, right?
Correct.
And bequest, writing a bequest is better, according to.
It's a sunnah thing to do, but it's not obligatory. But originally it was obligatory. And originally you said you have money, you have to now have, if you die, how is your money going to be divided up? And you had to do that. And then that was abrogated by the fact that the Sharia has already done it. Right. In Singapore, does Islamic inheritance automatically apply to Muslims?
Yes.
Yeah. So you didn't even know about it, right? You hardly knew that you were Muslim, right? But on your identity card it said Muslim, right? Khalas, that's how it's going to work. Right? Unless I'm sure you went through some legal processes. I don't want to do that, etc. But right, that's what we're talking about. As opposed to bequest, that's not default, and you have to go through that process. A man who makes a bequest. So in the West, right, where there isn't that situation, or even in the East, when it's not the case, then you have to make a bequest. Why? Because they're going to divide up your money and give it to people who it doesn't belong to. So you have a house, you have savings, you have money, you have land. Make a bequest and say, this is how I want it to be divided up in Islamically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Because otherwise it will not be done like that. And otherwise people will take money that is not theirs. Okay, so it says, Bab الرجل يوصي عند موته بثلث ماله. A man makes a bequest of 1/3 of his wealth on his deathbed. So, scenario number 1, I'm alive and healthy and wealthy. I'm walking down the street and I say, you know what, mashallah, I have millions of dollars. I give it all away to this dog foundation, right? Or the golf club, right? I've given all my money away to the golf club, or all my money away in charity. So I can do whatever I want with my own money. Okay. Now I'm in ICU. I'm in intensive care and I may die today. Okay. And I say, you know what? I'm giving all my money away in charity. Doesn't count because you are on your deathbed. It only is, so you are frozen. It's only frozen. It's frozen up to 30%. 66% of it is frozen. You can't give it all away. You can't do that. Right? Because your money is about to transfer to your heirs. You can do whatever you want in 1/3, but you can't do anything otherwise. So when it comes to a bequest, which only happens when you die, the same is a place. You said, I want all my money to go to the poor. When you die, your family is asked, are you happy with that? And they say no. Okay, 33% of his money will go to the poor. The other 66% will be divided Islamically. Okay. So it says, أخبرنا مالك حدثنا عبد الله بن أبي بكر بن حزم أن أباه أخبره أن عمرو بن سليم الزرقي أخبره أنه قيل لعمر بن الخطاب إنها هنا غلاما يفاعا من غسانة ووارثه بالشام وله مال وليس هنا إلا ابنة عم له فقال عمر مروه فليوصي لها فأوصى لها بمال يقال له بئر جشم. قال عمرو بن سليم فبعت ذلك المال ب30,000 بعد ذلك، وابنة عمه التي أوصلها هي عمرو بن سليم. So he says, Malik informed us from Abdullah ibn Abi Bakr ibn Hazm, who narrated to us from his father, that Amr ibn Sulaym al-Zuraqi informed him that someone said to Umar al-Khattab, there is an adolescent boy here from Ghassan, right? The Ghassanids, the Arabs, which side? On the Iraqi side, towards Iraq. Who has not reached puberty, and his heir is in Sham, is in the Levant, and he has some property. There is no one here but his paternal uncle's daughter, right? His niece, his cousin, right? His paternal uncle, his cousin. So your cousin does not inherit from you. Amr said, order him to leave her a bequest. So he left her a bequest called the well of Jusham. Amr ibn Sulaym said, I sold that property for 30,000 later on, presumably dinars, dirhams, I'm not sure, probably dirhams. In fact, the daughter of her paternal uncle to whom he made bequest is the mother of Amr ibn Sulaym. Right? That's his mother, basically. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا شهاب عن عامر بن سعد بن أبي وقاص عن سعد بن أبي وقاص أنه قال جاءني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عام حجة الوداع يعودني من وجع اشتد بي، فقلت يا رسول الله بلغ بي مني الوجع ما ترى وأنا ذو مال ولا يرثني إلا ابنة لي، أفأتصدق بثلثي مالي؟ قال لا. قال فبالشطر؟ قال لا. قال فبالثلث؟ ثم قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الثلث والثلث كثير أو كبير، إنك إن تذر ورثتك أن not in أن تذر ورثتك أغنياء خير من أن تذرهم عالة يتكففون الناس، وإنك لن تنفق نفقة تبتغي بها وجه الله تعالى إلا أجرت بها حتى ما تجعل في امرأتك. قال قلت يا رسول الله أخلف بعد أصحابي؟ قال إنك لن تخلف فتعمل عملا صالحا تبتغي به وجه الله تعالى إلا ازددت به درجة ورفعة، ولعلك أن تخلف حتى ينتفع بك أقوام ويضر بك آخرون. اللهم امضي لأصحابي هجرتهم ولا تردهم على أعقابهم، لكن البائس سعد بن خولة يرثي له رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن مات بمكة. So Malik informed us that Ibn Shihab narrated to him from Amr ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas that Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas said, the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم came to me in the year of the farewell Hajj, visiting me because of a pain. I was very sick. I said, O Messenger of Allah, the pain has become very severe as you see. I'm scared that I will die. I have some property and no one to inherit from me except a daughter of mine. Should I give 2/3 of my property as sadaqah? He said, no. He asked, then a half? He said, no. He asked, then a third? He answered, a third, and a third is a great deal or a large. Right? So the Shafis, we say, it is sunnah to do that your bequest be less than a third of your wealth. That you leave your heirs self-sufficient is better than leaving them needy, begging from people. You will not incur any expenditure seeking by it the face of Allah. Allah mighty is He, save that you'll be rewarded for it. So, i.e., providing for your family is sadaqah. even to the extent of that which you put in your wife's mouth. So at everything you pay electricity bill, you got to buy food, you got to buy new shoes, you got to buy these things. These needs are important. Okay, what about extra stuff? Extra things that have a key intention. A gift for your son because he's memorized Juz Amma. A gift for your wife for some kind of particular thing. Fine, but but should you be? Does that mean you get a reward for every single time you buy your wife a pair of shoes that she doesn't need, or every single time you buy your kids toys that they don't need, or every single time you buy them treats that they don't need? Right. So the issue is you're providing for them and you're giving them things that they need, and it will help them in their deen, right? Encouragements in their deen, right? Things that they actually need, as opposed to just being spending tons of money, right? All my sadaqah is on buying my wife a new pair of shoes every week, right? That's not a good thing. Right? He said, if you are left behind, so i.e., if you survive, and you do righteous deeds by which you seek the face of Allah, you seek Allah Himself, he will always you will always be increased by it in rank and honor. So it's a good thing to live for longer. You should try and live for longer. You shouldn't say, "Oh, I want to die now." Right? May Allah protect us all. We get cancer. Try and fight through cancer. You want to live another 5 years? You can do another 5 years of good deeds. Another 10 years. Another 20 years. You don't know how long. Right? If you are left behind and you do right actions by which you seek the face of Allah, Allah exalted is He, you will always be increased by it in rank and honor in Allah's eyes. Perhaps you will be left behind by having a long life until some peoples benefit from you and others are harmed by you, i.e., through jihad or whatever it is. Oh Allah, complete their hijrah for my companions, right? Accept it from them. They sacrifice so much, accept it from them. And do not turn them back on their heels. But the unfortunate one is Sa'd ibn Khawla, right? And the Prophet ﷺ was distressed for him because he had died in Mecca and he hadn't managed to make hijrah. قال محمد الوصايا جائز في ثلث مال الميت بعد قضاء دينه وليس له أن يوصي بأكثر منه فإن أوصى بأكثر من ذلك فأجازته الورثة بعد موته فجائز وليس لهم أن يرجعوا بعد إجازتهم وإن ردوا رجع ذلك إلى الثلث لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الثلث والثلث كثير فلا يجوز لأحد وصية بأكثر من الثلث إلا أن يجيز الورثة وهو قول أبي حنيفة والعامة من فقهائنا رحمه الله تعالى. So it says bequests of 1/3 of one's property are permissible after discharging one's debts. It is not permissible or valid to bequeath more than that. If someone bequeaths more than that and the heirs allow it after his death, then it is acceptable, but they cannot change their minds after having allowed it. If, on the other hand, they reject it, then it returns to the third that the Prophet said. A third and a third is a great deal. It is not permitted for anyone to bequeath more than a third unless the heirs allow it. That is the verdict of Imam Abu Hanifa and our fuqaha in general, and may Allah, etc. Right? So you can't, so basically they can veto it. That's the point. So did it go through? Did we talk about how inheritance works? No, it doesn't. You can look at that up in the playlist for Matan of Shuja', we spoke about inheritance there. But here it's because it's not going through how you do inheritance. It is going through the issues of things that are debated. Yeah, that's why. Okay. Then it says, كتاب الأيمان والنذور وأدنى ما يجزئ في كفارة اليمين. So oaths and vows and the least thing that discharges the expiation of an oath. So what is an oath? When you say by Allah. So by Allah, this happened. By Allah, this is the case. By Allah, this will happen. Okay? By Allah, you will do this. By Allah, I will do this. So that's what you're doing here is you're taking the worth of Allah, okay, and the weight of who and what Allah is, and using it to verify, to give strength and confirm a past thing that happened, a present situation, or something that will happen in the future. Okay, that's an oath. A vow is something else. A vow is when you get something sunnah and you make it obligatory, right? So it's sunnah to pray the 2 rakahs or 4 rakahs before dhuhr. You say lillahi alayya, for example, مثلا lillahi alayya and usalli 4 raka'atin qabl dhuhr, right? So it used to be sunnah, now it's obligatory. Okay, that's called a vow. Okay, so oath, I swear by Allah, this happened, this is the case, this will happen. I will do this, you will do this, etc. Right? As opposed to an oath, which is, sorry, a vow, which is, I vow to do this act of worship. It's what used to be sunnah, now it's obligatory. So أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا نافع أن ابن عمر كان يكفر عن يمينه بإطعام بإطعام 10 مساكين لكل إنسان مد من حنطة وكان يعتق الجوار إذا وكد في اليمين. So it says, Malik informed us, the Nafi informed us that Ibn Umar used to expiate an oath by feeding 10 poor people. For each, he would give a mud. Mud is 0.51 liters of grain. So you're giving them food that they can eat. He would free women slaves if he had stressed the oath. Right? Al-Jawari, afwan. ويعتق الجواري إذا وكد في اليمين. So okay. So you can free anybody, male or female, but he would specifically free female slaves. أخبرنا مالك. Here's a question. Is it good to be freed? So the Sharia in general tells us to free slaves. The Sharia in general, there's the show off. The Sharia kind of works around freeing slaves. But is it good to be freed?
Um, I think it depends on how someone looks at it. I think there'll be more responsibility.
So imagine if I'm 40 years old and I'm a slave and I live in Singapore and you set me free today.
Oh, that's tough.
So
That's
what
tough
am
for
I
me.
doing right now?
Sorry?
So what am I? So I used to be your slave, okay? I'm
Uh-huh.
not interested if you can pay rent or not. It's not my problem.
Yeah.
I'm not interested if if food's expensive, right? So basically, it's your problem, right? It's like I'm a kid, right? That's why they call it ghulam. Ghulam is a slave, which means a kid. Jariya means a little girl, which means a female slave. Like I'm not actually responsible for anything. So yes, I don't have my own life. Like I want to do things. I can't give charity. I can't really go on Hajj. I can't do anything. But hey, I eat, I drink, and I have a house over my shoulder. It's great. And I have no worries because I'm not responsible for paying for anything. Okay? So it's very important to understand that. So yes, the Sharia emphasizes it, but freedom is not that amazing, right? So you live in England, okay, and healthcare is free. Housing might be free if you're under certain scenarios. Education used to be free. So that was fantastic. I live in a time where basically if I don't make enough money, I'll get extra money from the government. If I go to school, go to do study for free, I could do this, do that. There's lots of things that are really good, right? I live in another situation where healthcare is not free, education not free, and if I don't get a job, then I'm going to do anything. It can be very difficult. Life can be really hard. I would actually prefer to be in debt, right? Prefer to be in debt, right? What if I'm a slave and I'm owned by an important tribe? This huge tribe comes into town and tries to kill us all. I'm defended by the tribe, right? I'm very happy, right? So I'm talking from a worldly point of view. These things are very important, right? You know, it's not as simple. Pros and cons are not as simple as you'd imagine. Okay, yeah. So he said, وأخبرنا مالك حدث يحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري عن سليمان بن يسار قال أدركت الناس وهم إذا أعطوا المساكين في كفارة يمين أعطوا مدا من حنظلة. I don't think it's حنظلة, it's حنطة. حنظلة is something totally different. الحنطة. So the previous one says حنطلة, which is obviously wrong. It's حنطة. And this is حنظلة, which is even more wrong. Right? It's حنطة. Right? Wheat. بالمد الأصغر. ورأوا أن ذلك يجزئ عنهم. Right? So Malik informed us that Yahya ibn Sa'id narrated to us that Sulaiman ibn Yasar said, I used to come across people, meaning the Sahaba, right? I'm a tabi'i. I look at the Sahaba in Medina. This is what they used to do. And when they gave to the poor for an expiation of oath, they used to give a mud of wheat, the smaller mud. And they were of the view that discharged it for them, right? We fulfilled, right? Okay. أخبرنا مالك أخبر نافع أن عبد الله بن عمر قال من حلف بيمين فوكدها ثم حنف يعني احنث فعليه عتق رقبة أو كسوة 10 مساكين ومن حلف بيمين ولم يؤكدها فحنف فعليه إطعام 10 مساكين لكل مسكين مد من حنطة فمن لم يجد فصيام 3 أيام. So he said, whoever swears an oath stressing it and then later breaks his oath must free a slave or clothe 10 poor people. Whoever swears an oath without stressing it and then later breaks it must feed 10 people, giving each person a mud of wheat. Whoever does not have that, then let him fast for 3 days. So this thing about stressing it, what does it even mean by stressing it? Let's have a look here a second. It's not a mas'ala that I'm familiar with. So look in the commentary here. It says to repeat the oath. To repeat it, that's what he's saying. So here he makes this distinction between repeating it and not repeating it. Wallahu alam. I don't know. That's something in the Shafi school. Wallahu alam. And I don't know if that's any school. Wallahu alam. Yeah. So he mentioned that this is the position of Ibn Umar. It's something that is unique. So key concept. When we say that the Maliki school is the school of Zayd ibn Thabit or whatever it is, or the Hanafi school is a school of Abdullah Mas'ud, that does not mean it's a carbon copy, right? So a school is bigger than the individual. The Hanafi school is bigger than Imam Abu Hanifa. The Kufan school that is kind of, excuse me, heavily influenced by Abdullah Mas'ud is not Abdullah Mas'ud. So Abdullah Mas'ud may have certain fatwa that everybody disagrees with, right? Sayyidina Umar himself is very important in all four madhahib, but doesn't mean that every single thing that he said is accepted, right? So here we have this thing from Ibn Umar. Ibn Umar is saying that basically if you say it twice, you do a different, like it depends on how strong the oath is. That's not a variable for the majority of scholars, right? So he says basically you got these two options if you do it if you say it twice, and two options that are easier if you do it once. That's not a thing that the majority of scholars say at all. Right? So he says قال Muhammad. So Imam Muhammad doesn't object to it. He just says قال Muhammad إطعام عشر مساكين غداة أو عشاء. Right? He doesn't even explain anything here. Oh, he's going to explain in a second. So he's going to mention a difference of agreement because basically he's saying that it means you give them lunch or dinner, right? So نصف صاع من حنطة أو صاع من تمر أو شعير. So Imam Muhammad says feeding 10 poor people morning and evening. Oh, morning and evening, or half a sa' of wheat. So there's two issues here. Number one, a sa' is 2 mud. Okay, so what we've seen so far in Medina is you can give them a mud, which is one scoop, one portion, right? So he's saying you got to feed them for the day, which is lunch and dinner, and you got to give them 2 mud. Okay, or 4 mud of dates in barley. So that's number one. Number two, the sa' for the Hanafi, the Kufans, is not same as the sa' for the Medinans. So the measurement itself is another issue. Okay, so there's the issue of what fraction and also the measurement itself. So now Imam Muhammad goes on a tangent. He says, basically, we disagree. He starts quoting his own sources. So he says, قال محمد أخبرنا سلام بن سليم الحنفي عن أبي إسحاق السبيعي. This is all Kufan. أن يرفع مولى عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال عمر بن الخطاب يا يرفع إني أنزلت مال الله مني بمنزلة مال اليتيم إن احتجت أخذت منه فإذا أيسرت رددته وإن استغنيت استعففت وإني قد وليت من أمر المسلمين أمرا عظيما فإذا أنت سمعتني أحلف على يمين فلم أمضها فأطعم عني عشرة مساكين 5 آصع. So usually say آصع. He says أسوع. Usually we do قلب مكاني. He says أسوع. But he says أسوع, which is not the norm. We usually say آصع. بر بين كل مسكينين صاع. So this is Muhammad said, my teacher, Salam ibn Sulaim, said that his teacher, Abu Ishaq al-Sabi'i, said that Yarfa, who was the slave of Ibn Umar, he was there working with him, right? He said, the Umar al-Khattab said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regarding the property of Allah in respect to me is the same as the position of the orphan's property. Meaning, I am now the Khalifa. I don't have a job. Okay? I am like somebody who's looking after 20 orphans. Okay? I don't have time to work. They have money. I'm looking after the money for them. And whenever I need money, I take some money. Okay? So what he's saying is the Bayt al-Mal is like my money now. I don't have any other money. Okay? So the Bayt al-Mal says, if I am in need, I take some of it. But when I have ample circumstances, then I repay it. Otherwise, if I am in no need of it, then I abstain from it, just like you are with the orphan's money. I have been put in charge of tremendous affair of the Muslims. I am busy. So if you hear me swear an oath which I do not discharge, and then I don't have any money, so then go and take money from Bayt al-Mal and then feed 10 poor people on my behalf with 10 sa' of wheat, dividing a sa' of wheat between each 2 poor people. Then feed 10 poor people on my behalf with 10 sa', dividing a sa' of wheat between each 2 poor people. That doesn't make sense. It says feed poor people on my behalf with 10 sa'. So there's 10 people and 10 sa' of wheat. And the default is a sa' is 4 mud. Dividing a sa' of wheat between each 2 poor people. That doesn't make sense because that means something wrong with the math, isn't it? Let me have a quick look in the commentary here. It sounds a bit odd. So if you give 10 divided by 10, it does not mean 5. Aha, there's a mistake in the translation. So this here, so it doesn't say 10. It doesn't say 10. So then 4, one second, one second. One second, I need to check this. It says, yeah, so there's 5. So feed 10, each of them, half. So it says, this is 5. It does not say that in the hadith. It says 5. Here, khamsa, 5. It says 5. That's why it doesn't make sense. Okay. So basically, 2 mud. So here, we're saying in Medina, they're saying you give a mud. Okay. Whereas, so here, Imam Muhammad is saying, that's great. In Medina, you were doing that, but you are wrong. And the proper thing is to give 2 mud, which is half a sa', and okay, which is that's what you should be doing because that's what Sayyidina Umar did. Then he quotes another source. So he says, أخبرنا يونس ابن أبي إسحاق حدثنا أبو إسحاق السبيعي again عن يسار بن نمير أن يرفع غلام عمر سيف عمر الخطاب أن عمر قال له إن علي أمرا من أمر الناس جسيما فإذا رأيتني قد حلفت على شيء فأطم عني 10 مساكين كل مسكين نصف صاع من بر. Same thing. Half of a sa', which is 2 mud. Right? So he's saying you're wrong. It is 2 mud. Okay? And it's not 1. Yunus, so it says Yunus ibn Abi Ishaq informed us from Abu Ishaq as-Sabi'i. They informed us from that Yasir ibn Numayr from Yarfa, the slave of Umar, that Umar said to him, it is a weighty matter of the peoples for which I'm responsible, i.e., and the whole context is I have to take responsibility for these things, so I can't work and I have no money, so therefore I'm living off the state. And this is how people are supposed to, the governor, the doctor, the teacher, all these people are supposed to live off the state, right? The scientist, etc. Right? That's how it should be. And where does that money come from? That money does not come from zakat. That money comes from the Bayt al-Mal. Where does the Bayt al-Mal come from? It comes from jihad. Okay? So jihad funds Masalih al-Muslimin, the Muslim Common Fund. That is divided up in different things. Of that is money then that goes to fund people the doctor, the student, the etc. Right? The building of roads. So taxation, there should be no taxation for roads because it's supposed to come from jihad. Right? So taxation then is something that is necessary when there is no Muslim Common Fund. right? And these people who fulfill communal obligations, the teacher, the doctor, somebody else, the researcher who's doing essential research, these now are zakat eligible only because there's no Bayt al-Mal. Okay? So the situation where a doctor is wealthy is wrong. Okay? A doctor should be looked after by the state because we all need him, right? Just like we need the Grand Mufti, just like we need the Mufassir, just like we need the math teacher, just like we need the English teacher, just like anything that we need society should be funded by the state. If that's not possible, then they are communal obligations. And if these people engage in something else that communal obligation will not be there, then they are zakat eligible. Okay? So that's what he's talking about here. Okay, same thing there. And then he says, أخبار سفيان ibn Uyayna. Sufyan ibn Uyayna is originally Iraqi, but he is one of Imam Shafi's teachers. عن منصور بن المعتمر عن شقيق بن سلمة عن يسار بن نمير أن عمر الخطاب أمر أن يكفر عن يمينه بنصف صاع لكل مسكين. Same thing. Sufyan ibn Uyayna informed us from Mansour ibn Mu'tamir, from Shaqiq, from Yasar ibn Umair, that Umar al-Khattab ordered that he should expiate his oath with a half of a saw for each person, not a mud. Then he says, أخبرنا سفيان عن عبد الكريم, I believe this Ibn al-Makhariq, عن مجاهد قال في كل شيء من الكفارات فيه إطعام مسكين نصف صاع لكل مسكين. Right, it's not a mud, it's two mud. So Sufyan ibn Uyayna informed us from Abdul Karim that I'm pretty sure this is Abdul Karim ibn Mukharaq, who is weak, that Mujahid said for every type of expiation in which there is feeding, it is to be half of a sa', which is two mud. So here we have a debate then. So he's saying, listen, it's not just the Kufans that's saying that, it's also the Medinans. Notice on top of that, he doesn't quote a single hadith though. Okay? He's not quoting hadith. He's saying there are different fatwa among the Sahaba and Tabi'een, but we have more people and it's more logical and it's stronger. He's not quoting a hadith. Okay? Is that because there are no hadith on it? Or that he's not aware of the hadith on it. Right? Allahu a'lam. And he says, Ababu yahlifu bil mashi ila baytillah. So a man who swears an oath to walk to the house of Allah. So here's the question. Is it an act of worship to make yourself suffer? Like I'm لله علي أن أطعن يدي بهذا القلم, right? Or بهذا القلم الرصاص, right? Can you make a vow that you will stab yourself in the hand with a pencil? Right? The answer is no. Why? Because a vow is to get something sunnah and it becomes obligatory. So could I make a vow to walk to the house of Allah? Is it an act of worship to walk from New York to the house of Allah? Right? So you see the difference? Causing yourself pain, doing an act of worship in a more humble and more difficult way. Is that an act of worship or not? Right? Similarly, then, if it was an act of worship and you made an oath, by Allah, I will stab myself in the hand. Okay, so now what are you going to do? It's going to be haram to stab yourself in the hand. So therefore, you have to break your oath. So then you're gonna have to expiate, right? So with a vow, we're going to say is an act of worship or not. With an oath, we're going to say you confirmed a fact, a past fact, a present fact, something that will happen in the future, right? If that doesn't happen, then you're going to have to expiate. Does that make sense? So you can't make a vow to do something that's not recommended, but you can swear an oath to do something. By Allah, I'm going to kill that guy. By Allah, I'll walk from here to you. You can do that, but then if it's haram, obviously you can't do that, and you're going to have to expiate. But if it's permissible, by Allah, I will walk from here to the center, to KL center of Cali, right? That's not bad and nor is it good. It's just permissible. So by Allah, you will do it. Now you're obliged to do it. If you don't do it, you have to expiate. Does that make sense?
Yes, Ustad. And anything else that is not by Allah, like I promise to do so, that's
That's
something else, right?
That's different. So a promise is
Yeah.
I promise myself, or I promise you, I promise, okay, I'll promise you that, hey, for example, hey, let's meet up for coffee tomorrow. You say you promise, I promise. Okay. Am I obliged to do it? The answer is no. Right? So the position of the vast majority of scholars is that you are not obliged to fulfill a promise. Okay, you're not obliged to fulfill a promise. You are sinful for lying. So when you said it, you were lying. You're going to see, I'll meet you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Okay, sure. But you were lying. That's a lie then. But I didn't lie. I did intend to, but I've changed my mind. I don't want to anymore. So I call you up the next day and say, actually, I'm not going to come. So yeah, but you promised. Yeah, I changed my mind. I'm not obliged to. Okay, so the majority of scholars, you're not obliged to fulfill that. If you lyingly promise, you're sinful for lying, but you're not bound by your promise. That's number one. Okay, the Malikis, they say you are bound by your promise if there's financial repercussions. So, oh brother, I really want to get married, but I can't afford it. Say, how much does it cost to get married? Well, this. Go ahead, you go get married. I'll pay for everything. So I go and get married, and the dad's asking me, okay, but you can't afford it. So no, I can. This guy, this big businessman, he said he'll pay for everything. So really, okay, great. Planning. We got married. The guy's like, no. So the Malikis, they say if there are financial repercussions, you have to do that, right? And this is very important in today when you talk about a murabaha contract. I go to the bank and I say, bank, go and buy Muhammad Sabih's house from him and sell it to me for this much. So they go and buy it, and they say, I actually don't want it anymore. So in a murabaha contract, what they'll do is they will have at least three contracts in that. So they have a contract which is a contract of sale between the original owner and the bank, and a contract of promise between me and the bank, right? And following the Maliki school, that's binding. And then you'll find it, they'll write it in a certain way, it will be binding in a civil court as well, so that they have to fulfill that. Because otherwise, the bank will not buy the car from me because they don't. I might drop out. So the Maliki school, that's binding. Okay. Now there's a weak position in the Hanafi school and a weak position in the Maliki school that a promise is unconditionally binding, and this is the position adopted by Al-Hafidh As-Sakhawi. He has an essay on it, Al-Hafidh As-Sakhawi, التماس السعة في الوفاء بالعهد, and his ikhtiyar, his personal opinion, is that it is morally binding, and this is also the position of Taqiyuddin al-Subki. So Taqiyuddin al-Subki, he spoke about this. And he said, for example, I'll lend you money, okay? I lend you $10,000. And you say, listen, okay, I'm not going to ask for it until 5 years. You can pay me back in 5 years. So then 2 weeks later, I say, give me my money. And they say, Fareed, you said 5 or 2 years or 5 years, whatever it was. So yeah, I changed my mind. So Taqiyuddin al-Subki, he says, yes, qada'an, right? That's true. Qada'an, right? In terms of the court, I accept that when you stipulate a time on a loan, that time is irrelevant in the court. So you can request it earlier, you can pay it earlier or request it earlier, etc. But diyanatan, in terms of morality, that's an obligation. That's an obligation. So Taqiyuddin al-Subki, he said, yeah, you're obliged to do that. So yes, just because it's not a financial right that you can get in court, that doesn't mean it's not a moral right that you're sinful for not fulfilling, right? Taqiyuddin al-Subki, that's his position. Hafidh al-Sakhawi, and some Malikis and some Hanafis, they say you are unconditionally obliged to fulfill a promise, right? And you have to do that, right? So you promise your wife something, you promise your son something, you promise your friend something, you're actually obliged to do that. It's not just, you can't change, you're not allowed to change your mind, right? But that is a weak position in terms of the span of the deen. That is not the majority opinion. The majority opinion across the madhahib is that, hey, I promise to come to your house tomorrow. I changed my mind. I promise to have coffee tomorrow. I promise to let you borrow my bike. Right? I changed my mind. Right? You're not obliged to do that. Inshallah. So we'll continue with this inshallah next week. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.